In the Gun, episode 132. It is time for a WVU season review here in the Gun. It is your new favorite WVU football podcast, and today we will be doing the 30,000-foot view thing, looking at this WVU season, this 2023 season as a whole, the 12 games. We'll share some thoughts. We'll get into some individual awards, some moments, some different things, all of that to come here on this edition of ITG. I am Wesley Euler, your host, and I've got the best teammates in the business. We got this signal caller, Jed Drenning, and we've got, I don't know, Skylar, do we have a cool nickname for you yet? Mr. Extraordinaire, Mr. Here, Mr. There, Mr. Everywhere.
Shohei Ohtani.
You know, he snuck into one of those lists, Wes? He snuck into one of the lists that he populated with his name.
Hold on, were you in like a big game boomer list? Oh,
yeah.
You mean like a okay.
Yeah,
Remember?
I like
it
that.
had Wes, Jed, Callie, Owen. Yeah, he put Callie in there. So we call him Callie.
I didn't want to put my full name because it would take up the whole damn screen. So I said, let's go with Callie. That's what everyone used to call me in baseball. So I don't know if I like it or not, but I was like, it's better than putting the whole damn name.
Well, you don't like it? Well, then we got to call you that.
That's exactly it. That's right. You tell somebody you don't like a nickname and it sticks forever.
That's true.
Our producer / co-host, Skylar Callie Callahan, here today. Once again, good news, bad news. The bad news is we don't have Big O for this ITG roundtable. He is UPS. This is his month, December. The only person working harder than jolly old St. Nick and the Elves is Big O and Schmidt, and those people who work for UPS, for FedEx, for USPS, really anyone who works in any type of delivery or any type of retail this time of year. God bless you. Thank you for everything that you do to make the holiday season. The bad news is Owen just didn't have 60 minutes of his time to give us tonight with his work schedule, and we totally get that. The good news is, though, is I got his answers right here in front of me. So even though he won't be here, we'll still hear from Big O. We'll share some of his answers to some of these crazy questions and some of these review things that we are about to get into.
Now,
and
for
as
those
always,
listening, we just spent 5 minutes on the phone with him.
We did.
And we scared 5 years off his life by convincing him that we were live at 5 minutes into the conversation, and it scared him to death.
Oh, and everything you've been saying here is live on YouTube, by the way. We got 30,000 people that are watching right now. This episode of ITG brought to you in part by our friends at BetOnline, where the game starts and where we are going to start, gentlemen. You know, again, we've had some time to digest this season. I think we all did that intentionally. We wanted to take a couple weeks here, you know, and have some time to think about this and let it marinate and all that stuff and get the full snapshot. So we're going to each give a good, a bad, and an ugly designation. Okay? It could be something that was a theme over 12 games. It could be something that popped up at certain moments, a good, a bad, an ugly designation. And then we are going to talk some individual moments. We'll give a best moment and a worst moment of the season, and then we'll give some individual awards. We'll do Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, Position Coach of the Year, and then we'll share our favorite uniform combination that we wore before we get out of here. As well, too. So plenty to get into. Gentlemen, without further ado, we will start with our good, with our bad, with our ugly, and Skylar. I'm going to put you on the spot, Callie, right away. What you got for us, cousin?
So I guess, are we doing all three at first, or are we just going with the good to start out?
You know what? That's a really good question. Jed, how do you think we should do this?
Do it. However you want to do it.
I said
I get all three together, but however you guys want to do it.
Let's go
all
good.
three together then.
Okay.
Or you want to? Yeah.
We'll go all three. So my good, and this is going to be interesting because I got to figure out my bad and ugly on the fly here because I really don't have anything bad. But my good, no coaching search. We entered the year thinking, you know, this is a pivotal year for Neil Brown, and you know, you didn't really know how many wins he would need to get to for him to be safe, and for them to win 8 games, win 6 conference games. That's huge. This program has stability. You know what you got moving forward with your coach. I think that's the best thing. The bad, I'm going to go with, man, this is hard. It's hard to find the bad and the ugly in a 4-loss season. I'm going to go with something that's really not that big of a deal, but it's just kind of a pain in the butt. And it was the loss to Oklahoma. It's the bad, because I really didn't like having that last taste be that taste. You know what I mean? So yeah,
And
I
for
would
and
say
for it to be as comfortable of an Oklahoma win as it was.
exactly. And I think
The nature of it, yeah.
we kind of all thought going into it that that would be a game that they could win. We talked about that. And then the ugly, I'll save the actual moment for later. I'm giving this away, obviously, but I would just say losing to Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah.
Just losing the
Yeah.
game,
I know
regardless, I win.
we're going to get into that one. I know that one's going to pop up a little bit. I've got some more to say on that Oklahoma loss as well too. But I like those, Skylar. Those were some good ones. I like that good too. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. I mean, if you would have told us all, no coaching changes, particularly with the head coach, right? But I mean, at this point, a staff that's remained mostly intact before the season started, that would have been a good indicator, right? I mean, that means we're taking care of business and we're having a positive season, a step forward. I like that designation from you. That's good. Jed, you want to go next?
That's fine. My good, bad, and ugly are kind of interlinked. I'm going to start with the good. I think back to what it was like to be on the sidelines and watch what seemed like a very desperate 4th down and 10 situation at Houston, a must convert from midfield in the closing seconds of the game, and watching Garrett Green deliver that throw to Huddy make the guy miss, keep his balance, keep his feet, find a way against all odds to get into the end zone and give us the lead. That's what I'm going with for the good. The bad, immediately following that, and it wasn't just this one penalty against Garrett. It was, we had this problem for part of the year. CJ got flagged for it. It was an issue. Taking the helmet off to
taking our
celebrate
helmets
these
off on the
moments.
field of play.
And look, unless you're going to be smart enough to claim that you have a B in your helmet, and I didn't hear any of our kids make that claim to the official. Hey, I got a B in my helmet. You want me to get stung? So the bad, the penalty against Houston, and not just that, but also the issues we had with it earlier in the year. But that, of course, impacted the field position, impacted where we kicked off from, and that led to the ugly. And that was all the things that had to play out the way they did, starting with Aubrey Burks not being on the field, starting with the fact we didn't get much pressure, starting with the fact they got away with some holding, all the things that you would typically expect to see on a Hail Mary, plus a couple others, that it took for them to make that throw, make that play, and come down with that football, and for Dana to beat us the way they did. So that's my ugly. So right there you have it: the good, the bad, and the ugly in microcosm in Houston. That terrible Thursday night.
Ooh, I like how you laid that out, Jed. I dig that. Now, see, so you both had some surprises so far. I don't know if I've got any surprises, but I'll do my best here. Okay, those are good ones. I love those by both of you guys. My good was an offense with some pop, an offense with some juice. This was the first time since Greer and Sills and Gary Jennings and Big Yodney and all those guys that I've just really thought our offense can score every time they take the field. And maybe that's more of a back half good because at the beginning of the season, right, they're figuring their way out, and then Garrett gets hurt and Garrett ends up missing some time. And even when he comes back, he's not quite 100%. It took him a little bit to really hit their stride. But after, man, just the first few years of Neil, struggling with consistency on offense, struggling with consistency in the run game. I mean, I remember even with a back like Letty Brown, the message every week was, man, could this team just get to 100 yards rushing? If they could just get to 100, when we're averaging 72 yards or 73 yards a game, whatever it was, man, if they could just get to 100 yards rushing, they got a really good chance to win this game. Boy, we've come a long way to, games like BYU, games like Cincinnati, where it just felt like UCF. I mean, where they're just scoring at will almost every single time that they take the field. That to me, an offense with juice, an offense that was really fun to watch again, which is, let's be honest, in the glory days, in the best years of West Virginia football, that's kind of always been our bread and butter. Whether you want to talk Major Harris in those offenses, Rasheed Marshall in those offenses, Pat White in those offenses, Geno Smith in those offenses. Will Greer, Skylar Howard, the weapons that they had to work with. That's when WVU football has been its most fun, and we got back to that in 2023 for the first time in a few years. That was the good for me, an offense with some juice after a couple of years of struggling in that department. The bad for me, gentlemen, lack of a signature win. And so I'll go a little different here, right? And I want to be clear with this. I should point out from a national perspective, because to the three of us, to Mountaineer Nation at large, winning the backyard brawl is always the signature win. I don't care if you go 2-10 in a season. If you beat Pitt, that's the beauty of a rivalry. That's a signature win. Anytime you play those guys and beat those guys, that's a signature win. And that win, to be fair, did get a lot of attention from a national perspective, right? The atmosphere, the return of the brawl, the Sweet Caroline at the end of the third quarter, the country roads after the game. Those videos were played, and there was attention in that moment. But a national signature win, right? Going to Penn State and winning in Happy Valley, going to OU and beating the Sooners. You only get 2 or 3 opportunities at a win like that every single season. And unfortunately, we did not have our best showings in those type of environments. So that would be the bad for me. And then the ugly, it's funny. I had the Oklahoma loss as a game that really felt like a measuring stick at the time, and it's going to be the last time you saw these guys, and you're going out to Norman where you probably should have won when you were there 2 years ago and you let it get away from you. But since Skylar went with that, I'll do a little audible here on the fly. For my ugly, I'll go giving up 3 kick return touchdowns on the season.
2 in the same game.
Can't happen. 1 kick return touchdown is too much to give up in a season. 3 just can't happen. And listen, there was a lot in that Houston game that you can point to as the kick return, certainly. The Jalen Anderson in the end zone swing, certainly. Some of the penalties, some of the stuff that Jed mentioned. I mean, that Houston game, it felt like there were a million different swing moments, right? But one of those was certainly that kick return touchdown. And against Baylor, back-to-back, that could have cost you, maybe should have cost you that game as well, too. So, once again, my good, an offense with some juice that was fun to watch again. My bad, kind of the lack of a signature win from a national perspective that really grabbed the attention of a national audience. And then ugly, I'll go 3 kick return touchdowns given up on the season. Thanks to our friends at Toothman Ford. Jed was at Toothman Ford. I tell you what, you laid it all out, Jed. You had some oak barrel steaks, a big spread. You guys put together a really cool video that you can see on all of Toothman's social media channels. So make sure you get into Grafton, where we all know cars cost less in Grafton. Big shout out to JR and everybody at Toothman Ford. That was good, guys. I like that. Any final thoughts there before we move on?
It's interesting how you hit that, Wes. You made a great point. In other words, when you're 8-4, you would hope the exclamation point is the 8-4 itself, right? But if you're trying to spice it up individually, I mean, internally, as you talked about, the Pitt win's always going to be a Pitt win. Knocking Tech off for the first time since 2018, internally, that was a big deal, right? To get that monkey off our back.
Coming back from
TCU,
national runner up
as a double-digit underdog. That's right.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you're left standing with 8 wins. It has a 2016 vibe, a 1969 Jim Carlin Mountaineers vibe, in the sense that we didn't make the absolute most of our premium opportunities against a nationally ranked Penn State team or a nationally ranked Oklahoma team. But we got another shot against a North Carolina team. And I sent you guys something in the thread that we communicate through. And it's not the first time we're going to see that. It was the first one that I noticed, but people are already looking at their way too early top 25 going into next season. Yep. And they had West Virginia at number 20, this particular national outlet did. So this will change as the portal changes, of course. But guys, if we find a way to take care of business against a very talented North Carolina team and finish 9-4, so much of this going into these preseason polls is centered around your quarterback. It really is. Especially if you're a fringe top 25 team. I've said this many times. The difference between somebody being ranked 23rd, not ranked at all, maybe getting votes,
is their quarterback.
Is your quarterback return.
That was UNC coming into this season, right? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Didn't they start like 22nd, and that's because of Drake May?
That's often enough to put you over the top. So, given the nature of the way Garrett played down the stretch, if he has a good showing in the bowl game, and if we find a way to win that game, I do have to believe that we have a puncher's chance in some of these polls to land in the preseason based on some of the things we have returning. We had all that young talent as a nucleus offensively. We have all these backers back. So a lot of it's going to turn on what happens in the portal. Fair enough. But that was why I sent that to you guys earlier today, because I do think that's going to be somewhat of a theme. But again, when you don't have that quote unquote signature win, it would be a foregone conclusion. If we'd knocked off a ranked team and had a chance to finish 9-4, game, set, match, you're in the top 25 with what we have returning. But the fact that we didn't, that's why it's a conversation piece, right? But interesting. That's a great point on your part, Wes.
And
No,
I'll also add to
Go ahead, Sky.
the offense thing where you're talking about 2018. It's the first time we've had a tight end involved in the passing game since Trevon Wesco.
Right.
So, and I'm a big tight end guy. We've been hearing it for years that they're going to get the tight ends more involved. This was the first time they really did so. Cole Taylor actually led the team in receiving. I can't remember if it was
the early 80s.
One of the two. But yeah, it was really cool to see Cole Taylor. He is committed to the trust, so he will be back next year. Big news on that front.
Heck yeah.
And not just tight end news, but tight end news to build on, right, Skylar?
Yeah.
And to your point, I think it's the first time in about 40 years that a Mountaineer tight end has led the team in reception. Crazy. I think it's like 1984 or something like that. But so yeah, Andy's back. So that's a formidable weapon that we're going to have a chance in the offseason to enhance.
Sure is. I'm with you guys. Well said. And you know what? You go and take care of business against North Carolina and get to 9-4. Not only do you have a good shot to go into next season ranked, you might find yourself ranked in the final AP poll of this season with a 9-4 record and an impressive bowl win as well too. So yeah, I like all of that from you guys. That's a good start for us here in this one. Okay, now we'll move on to some moments here on our WVU season review.
Did Owen?
I was going to say, I didn't know if we wanted to, if I wanted to share all of his at the end, if I wanted to throw him in right now, but
they toss him as we go. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't give me a good or an ugly. He only gave me a bad. Okay. And that was every time we wear the Stormtrooper uniforms. Because he said they look really cool, but we have brutal results every time we wear them. So check off one off the board there for Big O.
You're not going to be wearing them at home against a MAC school for homecoming.
That's right. Exactly.
Typically, it's under the lights. It's on the road. It's against a pretty good team.
Norman, or it's in Austin, or yeah. I love it. All right. Moments. Best moment. Worst moment. Gentlemen, I'm going to start on this one, okay? I went last on the – I'll go first on this one because I don't think either of you guys, and Owen doesn't have my best moment. But just in case you do, I want to have first crack at this, okay? Speaking of signature wins and how the backyard brawl is always this to us. As somebody who grew up, Pittsburgh's foremost Mountaineer, the initials WVU in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that game meaning so much to me, to my family, to my childhood, to everything. For that going away for over a decade and then coming back and losing the first installment of that like we did in 2022 in that heartbreaker at Acrisure Stadium on Thursday night. Fellas, the best moment of this season for me, not even close, is Sweet Caroline at the end of the third quarter when we hosted Pitt. When it started, I went, oh no, this is a bad idea. We're jinxing ourselves. This is going to happen and we're going to blow it and it's going to be a laughing match. I could not have been more wrong. I was nervous when I first heard when the place went silent for a second, and then you heard the and
then everybody rose.
And everyone went nuts. I went, oh no. I can't believe we're doing this. We can't do this. We're gonna jinx ourselves. 3 minutes later, by the time it was over, there was no doubt in my mind we were winning that game. I mean, that place was just out of control. It was electric. It was the most I had seen Mountaineer Field rocking in years, maybe since that 2018 Oklahoma, the Kyler Murray, Will Grier game with a spot in the Big 12 championship on the line. That moment was one that I will cherish forever, especially because the Mountaineers took care of business in the fourth quarter and won the game by double digits. My best moment of the season, by far, in a season that had some really great moments, was singing Sweet Caroline with 61,000 of my best friends at the end of the third quarter as we went on to beat the stinking Pitt Panthers.
That's a good one. That's a
Jed,
good one. I tell you.
Jed, best moment of the season. Or you can comment on that first if you want to. Yeah.
Well, here we go. I'm gonna go ahead with mine, and it's my comment. Okay, so I have some listed here. A matter of fact, I tell you what, Skylar, that'd be unfair to you. Why don't you go ahead and hit yours, and then I'll
Okay.
have some of the ones I listed as like honorable mention.
There we go.
And I don't want, yeah, I don't want to steal your
This
thunder if I hit yours with an honorable mention here. But
Well, honestly, this is tough because it's really a tie for me. Like I've got a co-champion for this thing, but I've got to pick one. But I'll at least give you my thoughts on the runner-up. My runner-up has to be the Zach Frazier thing, right? Against Baylor, to suffer that injury, to grab Hudson Clement, drag him across the first down marker, get off the field, not go down, saves the time. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Just an insane moment that you just never think a kid his age will be able to process in that intense of a situation. Hats off to Zach. But Wes, I'm right there with you, dude. Like it has to be the backyard brawl for me. The reason I say that is because we've been to geez, 6, 7, 8 games between me and my wife together. And she has never experienced a backyard brawl. She's been to some games, but never a big game like that. And I've tried to tell her like this stadium is different. The atmosphere is different when you go to a game like this. She couldn't get to go to. She was unable to go to the backyard brawl in Pittsburgh, and I was excited about that. I knew that the very next year when it came to Morgantown was going to be insane, and she had to go. So I told her put the time in off for you to get off, and we'll go. She didn't have any idea what was about to happen. She knows about the sweet Caroline and everything. And when that happened in the third quarter, she looked at me. She goes, "Are they really doing this?"
That's what we were all thinking.
Yeah.
I think, right?
And-
Is this really happening?
And I think it was really cool too because she's kind of become a mountaineer by marriage, right? And she ended up actually going to grad school there virtually during the pandemic, and so she's kind of really fallen in love with WVU and everything. But whenever the game ended, she's like, "They're gonna play Country Roads, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Yeah.
As soon as came out of her mouth, it started playing, and I could see like the emotion just come over her face. And I'm like, "This is somebody that has lived and breathed North Carolina Tar Heels basketball for her whole life, and for her to take that moment and feel it as if she's a West Virginian, that was like an ultimate moment for me."
Love it. Love it, man. That's what
that's
it's all about. That's awesome.
I'll tell you what, that's a tough act to follow because it's when I
Well,
looked at mine.
then real quick
Go
here,
ahead,
real
Wes.
quick, Jed. Let me
Yeah,
give Owens first, and then that way you won't have to
yeah,
follow
go
that
ahead.
in case
Yep,
you touch
yep,
on his
yep.
too. Owens, you guys will remember Owens' best moment of the season was watching the Texas Tech goal line stand to get the victory down in the end zone with JR.
That's a
That was
forgotten
Owens.
one.
Koopman.
And yeah, and
J.R. Koopman,
everyone,
yeah.
you might have seen the video. We laughed about it. We shared it on all of our. But Jr. got a great video of Owens celebrating and
In the
screaming in the end
poncho,
zone
in the rain.
after we
Yeah.
held him on that fourth down in a poncho in the rain. And so being down on the field for the Texas Tech goal line stand and down there with Jr. and the good Toothman folks, that was Owens' best moment of the season.
So when I go through again, I was trying to brainstorm and stimulate the gray matter and see which one I thought I would settle on as the best moment. And um, the goal line stand or red zone stand, really, if you want to call it that, that's on my list because that was a big deal. It had that sense of here we go again, the other shoe's about to drop, just as it has so many times against these cats. But we finally found a way to finish them. The blocked field goal against TCU, same type of thing. We went into that building at 3-1, irrespective of our record. Nobody was giving us any respect. We were double-digit underdogs as a 3-1 football team. So I don't know where that thing would have gone on the road against an incredibly hot-handed Chandler Morris in overtime had it gotten to that point. But we didn't have to find out because Sean Martin got that big paw up and whacked that thing down. And so we had a couple blocked kicks, big special teams opportunities there to seal that win. It was a complete team win. One of the others on my list, of course, it's the first one listed, is Pitt Sweet Caroline. I mean, how can it not be, right? It was just such a seminal moment for so many reasons. And Wes, it's funny you'd say that, you knew after the 3 minutes of the song being played, the game was over and we won. Right?
There was no
Uh,
doubt in my mind we were winning.
this
Yep.
this was one of only two times since Neil's gotten here, and this is hard. Pre-game's hard, right? Because not many times in my life have I felt this way. That was the second time that when he finished his address to the team in the locker room, I thought the game was over and we won. That night against Pitt was the second time. The first one was
What
one
was
of
the first
those
one?
dedication games.
Mm.
It was back in like 20, I think, against TCU. And it was one of the games where we dedicate the week and our preparation to
Yep.
someone critical in your life and your family.
Yep.
And I remember thinking when Neil talked to the team that day, Gary, you don't know, you just lost. Sorry. We haven't left the locker room yet, but the game's over. You just lost. And we went out and beat them 24-6. But when he told the team before we took the field against Pitt, that energy out there is waiting on you. Feed off that energy. He said, guys, the people in this state and in those stands have been waiting since 2011 to celebrate a win over the Pitt Panthers. That ends tonight. When he said that, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. This is incredible. I said, oh, wow. I mean, it's just everybody in that room was swelling up. And that's only the second time in 5 years that I remember feeling that way before we left the locker room. So it's strange you'd say that 3 minutes into that song in the third quarter. If there was any doubt left, I agree with you. The way that the stadium just rocked.
I went from a ball of anxiety to
Yeah.
I'm partying for these last 15 minutes and enjoying the moment.
Absolutely. And so that's not what I'm going to go with, guys. What I'm going to go with, and I'm glad you mentioned Zach's moment, Skylar, because that's forever, to me, forever linked with this actual moment.
Yeah.
What Zach did and the sacrifice he made for this team set the table for this moment. But for what Zach Frazier did, we're not having this discussion. And when that ball was in the air and you saw Jaheim hit the rail and you recognized this is game, set, and match. I mean, Garrett has delivered a perfect ball. Jaheim has run a perfect route. Now to seal the deal, secure the catch, and let's go instruments up on this thing. But a couple plays before that whole drive was just so magical. Self-inflicted as that deficit might have been, despite the shortcomings in special teams and the other issues we had on and off throughout that night. That entire drive, starting with the play that Zach made, that will forever be etched in the annals of West Virginia football, is one of the great all-time moments. But a couple plays later, and I talked about this in the episode following the game, when Garrett scrambled and made his way out of bounds right in front of us, just the look on his face of a stone cold killer. I mean, at that moment, we were at midfield, and at that moment, I just took a deep breath and I was at ease because I was nervous, pensive, horrified, on edge, all those things like everybody else, wondering what's going to happen, what's going to happen. But somehow, some way, I'm just telling you, when Garrett moved by me, right up into me, looking through me on the sidelines, the look on his face, I was like, that's it. We're scoring. We're scoring. There's no doubt in my mind we are scoring. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know if he runs it. I don't know if he throws it. I just know we are scoring a touchdown. And to sit back and kind of just enjoy the final so many seconds of that ride and watch that ball in flight and Jaheim come down with that. It was one of those things that you literally could not believe what you were seeing. I mean, he was probably 20 yards away from me when he caught that football in the end zone. And your first thought, it was similar. Circumstances are different, but when something like that happens, I remember this crossing my mind when Will scored the 2-point conversion to beat Texas in 2018. Again, he was right in front of me. You're like, I can't believe that I'm so close to this incredible moment in history that people will remember forever. That's literally your first thought. When it happens right in front of you, that is your first thought. This is history, and I've got a front row seat for history. And that's what it felt like as Jaheim White was making that catch. So for me, guys, that was, we might not have had the signature win, but we certainly had some signature moments.
No doubt.
And
Absolutely.
that was the signature moment of all signature moments to finish the 12-game season. And what a perfect cherry on top that was.
And I'll add one more quick thing right here, too. Don Nealon getting immortalized. That
Great
was
call.
long overdue.
Very good one.
Great call. I'll add one
Very
more
good.
real quick too. I've got family from Tennessee. They live there. They are, they're from Doddridge County like the rest of my family. They lived in Clarksburg for a long time, but they've been in Tennessee now for like 20 years. And they had not been to Mountaineer Field since 2008. My cousins had not been to Mountaineer Field since they were like 14, 15 years old. And now we're all in our 30s. And so they came up. I remember I shared this with you guys. They did, because they're Titans and Steelers fans, depending on, which ones. So they did the Steelers Titans game in Pittsburgh on Thursday and stayed with my wife and I. And then we all went to the WVU BYU game Saturday. For that to be a night game, the tailgate that we had, and then to go and just comfortably smoke BYU in one of the most stress-free environment. And we had a great time, and it was an easy win and a comfortable win and so much fun. And that was a night that I'll remember for a long time too. Just my Tennessee family being up here. I only get to see them once or twice a year in general. And like I said, they hadn't been to Mountaineer Field in 15 years, 14 years, something like that. So
I mean, if
another
you think about
another
it,
quick shout out to my Tennessee fam if they're listening to this episode.
I mean, if you think about it, it felt like every win had a moment, right? Even if it was
No doubt.
Duquesne,
Yeah, like we
Duquesne,
talked about.
the 2 hour weather delay. Yeah, in UCF, it had some kind of moments.
No, UCF had a moment. It was Beanie Bishop. It was Beanie Bishop catching an interception that bounced off a dude's foot.
Yeah, and then you had Eric Collins calling the flipping interception, which is hilarious because I give him crap for it all the time because he's actually the Hornets play-by-play guy on TV. And the day that he came back, I was giving him crap for it. And he just laughed. It was funny.
UCF moment is always going to be, guys, in the post game. Listening to Garrett talk about he came into the post game press conference with the ball in his hand.
That's right.
After scoring 3 touchdowns.
That's right.
And he said, "This is one of my grandma.
Yep.
She came up from South Florida to watch me play. She's been a school teacher for a quarter century. She never takes time off work. She asked for a day off to travel up and watch me play. And I'm going to give her this ball as soon as I leave this press room." And that's what I'll always remember. But Wes, you talked about smoking BYU. I think it's worth mentioning that those are 2 games right there that are somewhat unheralded. The BYU and the Cincinnati games. That, look, the mark of a good football team is
I'm glad you're saying this. Yep.
And take care of business against teams like that. In other words, you don't struggle. You don't let them hang around. And in both those games, we used the home field to our advantage. We played fired up football. We got out to a fast start. We handled BYU and Cincinnati like a good football team would handle teams like that.
Kalani Sitake gave us a moment before the game even started too.
Yeah, he did.
Right. Country roads, baby.
No, guys, and you'll laugh too. I put in my other here on my notes on my outline for this. I put, make sure to mention dramatic victories: Pitt, Texas Tech, TCU, and Baylor. Make sure to mention the return of blowout wins, something we haven't had for a while: BYU and Cincinnati.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what good teams win close games, and good teams win comfortable games, and we did both of those things this season. All right, gentlemen, before we go to break, worst moment. Jed, you haven't let us off yet on one of these, so you up first here. We'll spin the block right back to you. Worst moment of the season.
I have to go with the muffed punt against Oklahoma State.
Oh,
I mean, it's a 24-20 game. It's the 4th quarter. We're getting ready to take possession. Pretty much had the sense that we were about to seal this thing, right? In other words, it's hard to think back to what that game was like at that juncture, because from that moment forward, it became almost immediately a completely different game. But it was 24-20. We were in control. A special teams faux pas. We get blocked into our return man. Andrew Wilson-Lamps gets blocked into him. We saw the same thing happen a couple games later with the opposition doing it. But it was 24-20. We were starting to get a little rhythm on offense. You just kind of felt that was the moment we were on the verge of seizing control of that game. And instead, we gave it back to them. And if you remember what unfolded a couple snaps later, we almost got the defensive stop, but they ran the perimeter screen. Presley makes the one guy miss on a very controversial block on the perimeter. We thought we got held. He busts the thing 28 yards or so. They take the lead and they never look back, because from that point forward, it was the Ollie Gordon show. We were, rolling the dice, pushing numbers downhill, playing zero, missing run fits. The rest is history. But at that point, that was such a fundamentally different game at 24-20, a couple minutes into the 4th quarter. Then it ended up 48-34, and it was a whole different animal. It was a whole different game than what it was with just, 12 minutes. I don't remember exactly what time was on the clock, but it was a few minutes into the 4th quarter. We were in control. Everything seemed to be going in our favor. We were making our own luck, and then that happened.
Yep.
And to me, that was the worst moment. In some ways, it was worse than the Hail Mary at Houston, because it came a week later, and it was our opportunity to recover from the Hail Mary at Houston. But instead, we kind of doubled down on the misery. And it was bad.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it was.
I'm kind of right there with you, Jed. I mean, I know Wes, you're probably going to talk a little bit about that other game against a former head coach of ours. So I'll steer away from that, and I'll kind of piggyback off of what Jed was saying a little bit about the Oklahoma State game. That was the game. Me and my wife went up to. We actually filled in for Wes
That's right.
in the
That's
box
right.
seats, and we were having a great time, a great weekend. Felt like even though they weren't playing great football, they were hanging around in the game. That happens, and the game kind of got out of control. Everyone started leaving the stadium. I'm like, all right, I think we should just start heading back because I had to do a post game show, and it was pouring down rain the whole way back on the walk back, and ended up being drenched. But I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to go with the two scary injuries at TCU with Trey Lathan and Aubrey
Ooh.
Burks. It seems like this is happening more and more often in sports. Even just happened with the Mountaineer basketball team with the Cook. But to see those guys go down and the way they went down and just that whole scene is just a dark, eerie feeling that I don't like. And
Yep.
it just makes you think for a second that your life could change just like that. And I think, fortunately for those two guys, they came out on the other side of it really good, and they seem to be. Obviously, Aubrey came back and has played. Trey Lathan seems to be on his way back, but those two individual moments were really hard for me to watch.
Listening to the
Well said.
kids on the
Well said.
field
Yeah.
wail.
Yeah,
We were all in the middle of the field during that extended stoppage of time, and we didn't know what was happening with Aubrey. We just saw him getting loaded up, and listening to his teammates, just 20 and 21-year-old young men, just wail. It just rips your
gut
soul out. It
wrenching.
really does. That's such a dark part of this game we love. But as you said, they both bounced back. It, as you would expect, it impacted Aubrey for a while. But yeah, it could have turned out much differently than it did. But that was a tough moment. Good point on your part.
Yeah. Good call there, Skylar. I'm surprised. I mean, I not surprised, but I didn't think that we would get through both of your worst moments, and neither of you would have gone with the Hail Mary there that we saw, of course, in Houston against Dana. That was Big O's answer. Big O's answer, Jed, was the Hail Mary for worst moment of the season. You know, thinking you had a dramatic victory there. You kind of used that for your ugly. Skylar just touched on it there momentarily. So originally, you guys will laugh. I didn't pick the Houston Hail Mary as my worst moment of the season because I thought everybody else was going to pick that as their worst moment, and I wanted to be a hipster, but it turns out you guys were the hipsters and had different things. So it's funny how this works too, right? Because Skylar kind of used this as a best moment. For my worst moment, I put the Zach injury. And it's like a phoenix rising from the ashes moment because it is incredible in a way, right? It's poetic in a way of a guy who is as selfless and as team oriented as he is. For him to get injured in a moment like that, pushing his guy across the first down on a last second drive, getting off the field with a broken leg so that 10 seconds don't run off the clock for his teammate, like for his teammates. In hindsight, it's a beautiful moment in a way, right? It's a legendary moment, and as long as he makes a full recovery and all those things, it could be a real notch in his belt for not only his Mountaineer career but his football career as a whole. For me, though, I went with it as worst moment just because it's his last game he's going to play as a Mountaineer, and he's in the medical room. He doesn't get to be uh, jumping up and down for joy on the field with his teammates as they accomplish that. He doesn't get to be standing in the circle singing the fight song. It's West Virginia. It's West Virginia. It's the pride of every Mountaineer. Come on, you old grads, join with us, young lads, for the last time that he deserved to be in the middle of that with all those other seniors. And as you guys know, as someone who has a really good chance of being a high draft pick, it hurts his draft prep. It hurts his draft stock, all those different things. You know, he doesn't get to hit the ground running for his combine training and his pro day training. And now it's something he's going to be tested about at nauseum when he gets to the combine. And, you know, maybe instead of getting drafted in the early second round, he falls to the back of the second round or early in the third round, something like that, right? I liked your guys' perspective of the silver lining and the phoenix rising from the ashes in a good moment, which I do think in hindsight we'll view it that way. But for me, it was worst moment just because of what it cost Zach. The opportunity to have that moment on the field, the opportunity to have that moment in the locker room, the opportunity to really hit the ground running with his NFL draft process. Zach's broken leg was my worst moment. I guess it just depends on how you look at it, right?
And let me make this cinematic a little bit, Wes. You're exactly right. You could look at it either way, and I think back to that. There was a theme in Batman Begins between Bruce Wayne and Ra's al Ghul, and they were going back
Batman.
and forth throughout the movie about making yourself more than a man. You become a symbol. You stand for something greater, and it's almost like that was one of those moments for Zach Frazier.
Yep.
He almost transcended mountaineer status and became symbol status. It's now what he did on that final play of his career will forever stand as the mark and the measuring stick of what it means to symbolically be a mountaineer.
Yep.
So that is already here. We are how many weeks removed from that, and it is forever linked to his legacy already. I mean, we're going to be saying the same thing in conversations 30 and 40 years from now, just like we are 30 and 40 days after it happened. And that's pretty unique, pretty special. It's so bittersweet in the sense that everything you just said is spot on accurate. It's going to impact the preparation for the things he's dreamed to do his entire life. There's nothing good that comes from it in that sense. But the silver lining would be he's now more than just a mountaineer. I mean, he really is in some strange way, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say or
Yeah,
communicate here.
absolutely.
But
It
he
endears
went
you, It's like Jed. It reminds me a lot of Deshaun Butler, honestly. Like, I mean, you remember how Deshaun Butler's
that
career
moment with hugs. Yeah.
with WVU ended? Like,
Yeah.
in a way, that moment is more memorable than if Deshaun Butler's career would have ended with cutting down the nets and winning a national
Yeah.
championship. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in a
Yep, I know
much
what you mean.
different.
Yep.
But that's the now that we've had some time again to digest these things over a couple weeks, like that's the other example that I think of. A guy like Deshaun Butler who meant so much to the program in a moment like that, not being able to see that thing out. But because of that, I mean, he's one of the most beloved WVU basketball players of all time. Not just
Absolutely.
because of that, but that was kind of the send
It
off
sure
being
contributed.
being like that. Yeah.
And I think too with
Yeah.
Zach, you could also look at it as it sucks from his NFL preparation, but I think a lot of NFL teams and scouts, if they weren't sold on the kid already,
They're gonna love
they're
it.
even
Yeah.
more sold on him now just to see the sacrifice that he gave up on that play and then the mental fortitude that he had to get off the damn field.
No
Like
doubt.
and not
No
cost
doubt.
his team more time because I think Jed did the math. If he doesn't get off the field and takes the 10-second runoff, there's no time left.
Doesn't
So
happen. Yeah.
that's an incredible
You
job
take
by
the
him.
10-second run off. In other words, to quickly revisit it, if he doesn't carry Hudson to the sticks, we
That's even
lose
more
10
time.
seconds there.
Yep.
And then you have the runoff. So you're talking 20 plus seconds. But
Game's over.
it's like we talked about in the episode immediately following the win at Baylor. Somebody is going to draft him, and it's not going to be despite of this. It's going to be in large part because of
Because
this,
of it. Yep.
not just because of what he did in the moment, but because of what he is doing as we
Yep.
speak and the way he's so fiercely going to attack getting back on his feet. And they'll really see what he's all about. And that'll be part of the reason they're pounding on the table to make him a selection in late April.
You're absolutely right. Whatever team ends up selecting Zach Frazier, let's say it's the Houston Texans, okay? Let's say it's the Carolina Panthers. Let's say it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every team has former players that do media, that do website stuff, all those different things. Some dude from that team is going to be breaking down film of Zach Frazier on HoustonTexans.com, and he's going to be going, look at this guy right here. Look at what he did. Look at this warrior. You kidding me? Look at this guy. This is a football guy right here. And yeah, I cannot wait for that to happen.
And as Jed
It's gonna be a
mentioned
lot of fun.
multiple times too, the person that they're going to get too is just as good.
No doubt.
Did you see the picture?
He's gonna work in his wood shop. He's gonna visit your children's hospitals, and he's gonna punch people in the math.
Did you see the picture in Vegas with him and Peyton? Ray texted me that. I sent it to you guys, and then the football account posted it up. But his dad had the perfect line. Ray texted me, and it's a picture of Zach standing with Peyton Manning, and he said, "You ever find two better guys who can ID the mic than these two?"
Yep,
And I was like, "That is just so
No
spot
doubt.
on. That is so spot on." Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Well, we love Zach Frazier, and this is for sure not the last time that we will be talking about him. In fact, somebody on this podcast will be at the Combine for a week and is going to be spreading Zach Frazier propaganda every single day. And hopefully we'll have some audio and some conversations with him that will bring you late February, early March as well, too. All right, we got to get to a break here. Those were some more global perspective, whole season perspective thoughts. On the other side of the break, we'll close this thing down. We'll give out some individual awards. We'll talk more individuals instead of moments, if you will. We'll do that when we return on the other side. You are in the gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter at In the Gun Podcast.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
If you work the land, you just got to be a jack of all trades type. There's just too much to do. So if you got to be a welder or a farmer or a ditch digger, that's just who you are that day. Then tomorrow, you can be somebody else.
Get your Coyote at the new location of Johnston Equipment between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun here. ITG. It is our WVU season review episode. All right, now, first half of this thing, I thought we were going to have a lot of similar answers, and I think we all did a pretty good job, funny enough, of touching on different things and different moments and different angles. These individual awards here, I got a feeling we are definitely going to have a lot of the same answers. So, gentlemen, let me put it this way. We'll start with Offensive Player of the Year. I think this conversation we can kind of round table more than just going to each of us at a time. Does anybody not have Garrett Green as their Offensive Player of the Year?
I do.
You don't. All right. I've got 6. Owen's got 6. So I want to hear who else you two got.
54.
That's where I go.
I got 54. In other words, I remember having this discussion really before the Oklahoma game in the pregame. And, we were talking about, hey, who needs to play well? And we were all saying Zach does and the O-line does. And there was this conversation about, well, yeah, but so does Garrett. I'm like, well, that's all well and true. But you see what happens, what our quarterback and skill guys look like in a game like Oklahoma, where the offensive line didn't bring its premium optimal performance. When they don't play well, nothing else matters. And they were the tip of the spear for us. We said so many times in the offseason, look, there is a path for greatness for this West Virginia offense. There is. It might be a narrow path, but that path must necessarily be forged by this offensive line. And that is exactly what we saw happen. And not just the offensive line, but the versatility of the offensive line, playing 7 guys, not the 5 we talked about all off season. So I think that Zach's the glue that held those guys together. He's the glue that made everything else offensively possible. I don't think without Zach Frazier, we're talking about Jaheim or Garrett or any of the playmakers on the perimeter. I really don't. And so I think all the success that we enjoyed, and we had a lot of it. And trust me, that I can make a case for some of these other guys, but I think it's all downstream from what we saw at a number 54.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, Garrett had a terrific season. We didn't know really what to expect out of him when it all started, but I mean, Zach is unique. He's one of the best players in the country, and he's the only player on that offense that is the number one player, or arguably the number one player at his position in the entire country. So, I think it's. I don't want to say this as a slight to Garrett, but I think it's not even close in terms of the importance of Zach Frazier and what he means to this offense. So I think, I mean, you saw it with, early in the season when Garrett went down, they still won games. So, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with that offensive line and Zach Frazier, but Garrett, hell of a season.
I like it, boys. I dig it. I really do. Maybe I'm guilty of the NFL thing here. Where like MVP offense, it's always got to be a quarterback, right? No, Tyreek Hill can never win it. Somebody else can never win it. It's got to be a quarterback. Got to be a quarterback. Well, I like that. Pleasant surprise there. Okay, then I'm gonna walk out on a limb here again. Defensive Player of the Year. Owen and I both have Beanie Bishop. Do we all 4 have Beanie Bishop?
Yes,
I do.
Okay, there we go. It's unanimous.
Let me read you.
Give me the numbers, Jed. Give me the numbers.
A quick tweet I posted. You had obviously he's the 13th consensus All-American in school history. Skylar, you wrote about it. John Antonic wrote about it. Here is the path to becoming the 13th consensus All-American in West Virginia history. Now stop and think about that. 13th in history consensus All-American.
And we've played what 131 seasons of WVU football.
All that Beanie did this year. Again, what I like about it, it's not interception driven. It's production driven. There's more ways to produce defensively than just intercepting passes. He picked off 4 balls, which puts him, 15th, 16th tied in the country. He's among the national leaders, sure. But he made his mark in passes defended and PBUs. He led the nation in passes defended with 24. That is 8 more than all other Power 5 defenders this year. Let me repeat that. He had 24. Number 2 among all Power 5 defenders had 16. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that's the most by a Power 5 defender total since 2018. Okay? By any Power 5 defender. So 8 more than any other P5 defender this year, and the most since 2018. He also led the nation in passes broken up with 20. That's 5 more than all other P5 defenders this year, and the most by a P5 defender total since 2018. The most in 5 years by a P5 defender in both those categories. See, what I always try and do for a frame of reference, when I'm tracking numbers and tracking metrics, first, how do you stack against the collective pack? How do you stack against the pack this year? How do you stand against your league? If you fare well against your league, then I take it the next step. Where do you stand nationally? And then I look at it versus FBS and versus Power 5. Well, then once I see that you've staked your claim this year as one of the premier players, then I start going back in years, say, okay, when's the last time somebody did this or did that? I had to go all the way back to 2018 in tracking these numbers for Beanie. So to say that he was more than a worthwhile addition in the offseason through the portal, this is not bad for a kid who this time last year was a backup number 3 corner playing some nickel for Minnesota. So tremendous season for, and I like the fact that the game has bent a little bit in favor of some defenders where you don't just have 2 or 3 statistical categories and you either dominate one of those 2 or 3 categories and that's it, or you can't produce. Like I've always said, look, offensively, take a look like this. A quarterback, if I throw a 30-yard touchdown pass, well, That's one statistic. It's a touchdown. But it's another statistic. It's a completion. Plus, I get credit for the yardage. So that's not true on the defensive side of the football. So the NFL, for instance, hasn't even tracked sacks. They didn't start tracking sacks until 1982. So when you look at Deacon Jones, some of these guys, the reason they're not in the all-time sack leaders is because when they played, sacks was not a statistic.
Correct.
So some things are more contemporary. When you look at passes defended, when you look at pass breakups, those are more contemporary stats. And John Antonic and I have had these conversations. Imagine going back, and I'd like to do this as an off-season project if John could find the tape. Go back and find a guy like Steve Newberry. I would love to go through an entire season's worth of Steve Newberry's defensive reps. And we know how many interceptions he had because that's the only stat they tracked back then. You either picked off a bunch of passes or nobody knew your name, right? That was it. But now look at Beanie. Beanie has 4 interceptions and he's a consensus All-American. I don't think that was possible when Steve Newberry played.
No.
But I'd like to track like a Steve Newberry and see how many passes defended he had, see how many pass breakups he had. And for clarity's sake, let's review this very quickly for those listening at home might be confused. There are 3 defensive categories we're discussing here when you look at a defensive back. Okay. Category number 1, you're all familiar with interceptions. Pretty much is what you think it is. It's a pick. You pick off a pass, you get credit for an interception. And then there is a pass breakup. In other words, a pass in which you forced an incompletion, but it's not an interception. And then the third category encompasses both those first 2. So if you have 1 interception and 1 pass breakup, you have 2 passes defended. And that's how these stats that we just talked about with Beanie track. So again, I like the fact that you can demonstrate how productive you are as a corner by doing things other than simply intercepting passes, because there's so many more ways you can impact a football game as a defensive back than just picking off passes. And I think that Beanie has made the ultimate case in why that's true.
Well said, Jed. Completely agree. And I think Beanie has also made the ultimate case in laying out the blueprint for hitting on portal guys and what we hope
You're not kidding.
what we hope we can continue to do. Also, once again, in that secondary that is going to need some reinforcements through the portal. I had a feeling we were all going to be unanimous on that one. Big O going with Beanie as well, too. That's the answer for Defensive Player of the Year.
We'll close with Beanie here. Again, he led the nation in passes defended with 24. Last year, Malachi Ruffin led West Virginia. Beanie had 24 this year. As the team leader last year, how many do you think Malachi had to lead the entire team last year?
9.
I was going to say 8.
6.
Wow.
6.
Not bad. And Beanie had 24?
Quadrupled the output.
24.
I was going to say, that's 4 times as many, Skylar. I could do the quick math on that one, baby. You beat me to it, baby. Thanks to our friends at Fortis for presenting this episode of ITG as well, too, for roof performance and financial certainty. Make sure you're visiting fortis.us.com. Shout out to our guy, Rick Lewis, not a newcomer of the year, a returning champion of the year with Fortis. All right, gentlemen, last one of these designations. I left this one kind of open. I said rookie of the year or newcomer because you can go with a true freshman. You can go with somebody that we added in the portal. I don't know if maybe you guys doubled up here with Beanie. I'll be interested to see where everybody went with this one. But newcomer of the year, Skylar, let's go back to you.
I mean, you could go Beanie here too because he is a newcomer, but I want to spread the wealth a little bit here, so to speak. So I'm going to go with Jaheim White. I think it's pretty easy. I mean, what that kid did down the stretch, I mean, you got to think about it. He really wasn't playing that first half of the season. And most of those yardage, that came from the bye week on, and really not even after the bye week because he didn't really play a whole lot in Houston, if my memory serves me right. So
correct.
What he did really, especially in his final two games where CJ was kind of banged up a little bit and you really saw him come to life, not only in the ground game, but the 70-some yard touchdown reception that he had, and he just ran away from everybody against Cincinnati. It just gives you this hope and this feeling that they've got something special in this kid. And I don't really remember the last time, guys, like the last offensive player that made an impact like that as a true freshman.
Steve Slayton.
At a skill position. I mean, you're probably talking Steve
Noel
Slayton.
Devine. Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long, long time. And what he's done is I mean, he's just electrifying. He, in some ways, I think the excitement factor, he kind of reminds you of Tavon, but of course, with the running back position, I think he does give you that Noel Devine type feeling.
Completely on the same page. Jed, you concur? Or are you going elsewhere?
No, I agree. You could go with Beanie if you wanted to speak to the portal, but Jaheim. I mean, here's some perspective for you. We talked about the historic struggles in the run game when Neal inherited what he did offensively in 2019. We ran the entire year for 879 yards. As a football team, we ran for 879 yards. Guys, this year we had 3 700-yard rushers, and one of those was Jaheim. And as you talked about, Skylar, it took him a while to get lathered up. It really wasn't. I would say the light came on. Sure, we saw the spurt against Duquesne, but I think that was just an overwhelming talent deficiency on the part of Duquesne. But I think you saw he had some moments against UCF, but the Brigham Young game was really his coming out party, just as a well-rounded, complete back in the pass game and the run game. And he never really looked back from that. He had the big outing against Cincinnati. He was so productive and did so many things against Baylor. But I agree with you. You have to go back. I mean, we've had some freshmen with some moments. Tavon had some moments, right? I mean, David Sills, when he finally switched positions, had some moments. But the level of consistency, once he started humming down the stretch, it's been, I think, since Steve. It really has. That level of consistency, week in, week out, that level of production. And to think that he's really just, this is the surface of the ice. That's what this is.
Surface,
I mean, he hasn't hardly scratched that surface yet. It's I mean, he is going to get more explosive, more dynamic. The game's going to slow down for him even more. He erases bad plays. It's just he's been so exciting to watch. He's more than just a changeup. His vision, his speed, his skill set, his burst. He sees the crease, he sees daylight, he has all those God-given things, but also the things that he works to enhance. And again, I remember watching him on tape when he was a senior last year at York, and then talking this time last year to his high school coach and how excited they were about what he could do. And he's really just, think back to the spring. Remember how excited everybody was in the spring game when he popped that big run in the second half of the spring game. Well, those of us who had been at practice during spring ball saw that throughout the course of practice. So really, since the first day he showed up in pads in spring practice, even when the media wasn't looking, when the fans weren't looking, these are the types of things he's been able to do. He has that gear, he has that it factor. I think you almost have to go with him. And that's to say a lot when he's part of a very talented freshman class.
No doubt. Talented freshman class, talented newcomer class. I mean, right? Cole Taylor's technically a viable answer here. Beanie Bishop, like we mentioned. A lot of great options. I went with Jaheim White as well, too, though. For everything that you guys just said, the only thing I'll add, gentlemen, is this kind of gets back to my first answer, right? When we were talking about the good of the season, and I said an offense with some juice, an offense with some pop. This offense was crying out for a game breaker, an explosive playmaker, a home run hitter, right? CJ is a solid player, but he's not necessarily a home run hitter. Cole Taylor, Devin Carter, right? I mean, you had guys that are good players, but not necessarily home run hitters. Garrett Green was really your only home run hitter on offense, and he's your quarterback. Jaheim added that much-needed final element to that offense. Someone who could take a play that should go for 70 yards and take it, or someone, sorry, let me say that again. The holiday cheer beers are catching up to me. He's someone who could take a play that should only have gone for 7 yards, and next thing you know, you blink and he takes it 70 yards to the house. Those are the type of guys that we haven't had in a couple years as well, too. And Jaheim has changed that. And as you guys have alluded to, the most exciting thing is that he's just it's like Steve after his freshman year. It's like Noel after his freshman year. Like if that's the starting point, imagine where he's going to be going forward.
And I do think this class has 3 of those kids. I really think that. I think we're going to be having similar discussions about Traylon Ray and Roddy Gallagher this time next year. I think all 3 of those kids are game breakers.
I love it. Gentlemen, this one was not unanimous, though, because our hipster Big Owen Schmidt had to show some love to the linebackers. And I thought he made a good point. He said Ben Cutter was his newcomer of the year because of what you had transpire at that linebacker position. You thought Josiah Trotter was going to be the first kind of young guy to get a crack at it. He ends up getting hurt before the season even started. Trey Lathan goes down. Then all of a sudden you're down Trotter, you're down Lathan. You desperately need somebody viable who can steady the ship there and man the fort. And Ben Cutter asked to do a lot as a freshman kind of right away there, and was able to man that ship and keep that thing humming and have a solid freshman campaign of his own. So Big O is going to deny the unanimous vote, but with a good answer in Ben Cutter as well, too.
How about a little honorable mention here? Special teams.
Hey, speak now or forever hold your peace, baby. Michael Hayes is a good one.
In the kicking that he did, filling in for Casey Legg, he was very good in his own right. There's a lot of questions about the kicking game coming into the year.
There was. Listen, special teams, that third side of the football, you forget about it until it costs you, right? And our special teams, listen, kick return unit aside, special teams was well, not kick return, I guess. Kickoff unit. Pardon me. But you guys get what I was saying there. But yeah, good shout, Skylar. I like that one. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, gentlemen, just two more here as we close this thing down. This one I'm going to be interested to see where everybody goes. I think I have a good answer here, so I don't know if I want to go first. You know what? We'll let Big O go first on this one because I don't think I've led off with his answers on any of these. His position coach of the year, he said, this is a real easy one for me. He said it's got to be Chad Scott. What he was able to do with that offense as a whole, what he was able to do with those running backs. Big O going with Chad Scott as position coach of the year. That's a tough one to argue. That's not my answer, but that's a great answer. That's a tough one to argue. Jed, let's go to you here next. Position coach of the year.
Yeah, Chad Scott will be easy, right? I mean, it's difficult to argue against that. I tinkered with Matt Moore. There's some glue to Matt Moore. I think Zach Frazier and Matt Moore have been the glue holding that whole group together, and they've taken the next step. And really the reason they were able to achieve what they achieved was in large part because Matt Moore has been that mainstay in that room for the last 5 years. But maybe it's a curveball, maybe it's not. You tell me, Wes. I'm going with Sean Reagan.
Wow.
Ooh,
okay.
And the reason I'm going with Sean Reagan, look at what this guy's done. You talking about the ultimate team guy as a staff member. A year ago, we got what we thought was the hot shot coordinator in Graham Harrell. And, Sean Reagan has spent his entire career as a quarterbacks coach, the lion's share of it coaching those quarterbacks. But Graham Harrell steps in as the new OC. Part and parcel of that deal was him coaching the quarterbacks. So, Sean didn't complain, didn't say a word, stepped aside and said, look, I'm going to go coach the tight ends. And for a year, that's exactly what he did. He, handed things over to Graham and let Graham coach the quarterbacks. Well, Graham moves on to Purdue in the offseason, so we're back to the staff that we had initially. Sean Reagan settles right back into that QB room, and all he does in the midst of that is not just help transform Garrett into what we saw Garrett become, which Garrett this time last year was not that player. Was not. I can't say it enough. People saying we should have been playing Garrett all along. You weren't watching practice, okay? He was not that player. That took coaching. That took Garrett's willingness to take the next step and take that coaching. So I think Sean Reagan did a heck of a job in helping Garrett become the player that he is developing into. And oh, by the way, along the way, helped this staff take a backup quarterback and win the backyard brawl and beat Texas Tech for the first time since 2018, when Nico had to make basically 2 starts, if you want to, say outside of the 6-9 snaps that Garrett played against Pitt.
Yeah.
But so I say hats off to Sean Reagan for doing a bang up job, and we're falling in love with what we're seeing coming out of that quarterback room with the combination of Garrett and with Nico. And I think that's has a lot to do with don't sell short the job that Sean Reagan's doing in that room, and the most valuable set of eyes that potentially Neil Brown has up in the sky, up in the booth, is Sean Reagan. I know the tremendous level of faith that he has in Sean and what Sean sees for him to convey that down through the headsets to him on the field. So Sean Reagan's been an instrumental part of the staff. And to me, I think maybe as a dark horse, but I'm going to say he's my assistant coach of the year on the staff.
Love it. Love it. All right, Skylar, hold on.
Yep.
I got a feeling you and I'm not feeling good about this. I got a feeling you and I have the same answer.
No, I don't think we do. I really don't. This is
Okay.
this is a curveball.
Here's what we're gonna do, just to be safe. Just to be safe.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I got a number 1 or 2 behind my head. All right, and I promise you, I'm not gonna change it. All right.
Yep.
Hold on. Let me do this side. You know what? Actually, let me do it like this, so you guys can very easily
Are you
see that
flipping
I'm
me
not
off
cheating.
right now?
I'm flipping you off. Odds are on our system here. Odds or evens.
Evens.
You go first. You're
Rock,
correct.
scissors, paper, that thing. Come on.
You go first. You were correct. It was even.
All right. So
Lost rock, scissors, paper opportunity. I'll tell you that.
Rochambeau. What if like one of us got delayed and then
or if
Even better.
the Zoom thumb thing would start popping up.
That's right.
Let's not do it at that time.
So, you know, I like what Jed said about Matt Moore. What he's done with this group essentially has just groomed these young pups along over the last 3-4 years. But I'm going with a major curveball, and I don't know. I might be breaking rules here, but I don't really care. I'm going Neil Brown, offensive coordinator, Neil Brown.
Oh.
Because this is an offense that was stagnant for 3 to 4 years, didn't really have an identity. He found that identity towards the end of last year when he switched to Garrett Green. And then the first kind of 4 or 5 weeks, we talked about how they had to manage the game because of the quarterback injuries. The TCU week, he finds out late that Nico's got an ankle sprain, so now he's got to go to Garrett to see if he can even play 48 hours before they have to even play the game. And I think, too, not only did he make it work, but he made it flourish. And it almost kind of gave you like a Sean McVay type of vibe or a Mike McDaniel type vibe, all the window dressing that they do. It's not only a fun offense to watch post-snap, but it's also fun to watch pre-snap. All the movement, all the eye candy, getting the defense to have no idea where to look or put their eyes on. I think the job that Neil did with that offense, he's taken a lot of flack over the years, but he has done an incredible job with that offense. So I'm going to go offensive coordinator, Neil Brown.
I love it. Nobody went with mine. The ultimate curveball. My guy, your guy, used to get an up-close look at him at Steelers training camp every year. Now he's roaming the sidelines for the Mountaineers. Gentlemen, we talked about Cole Taylor earlier, right? And we said all these things. Led the team in receiving. First time that's happened in 40 years. Tied for team lead in touchdown receptions. Had more receptions this season than I think the WVU tight ends did for like the last 3 seasons combined or something like that. Tight end was a forgotten position under Neil Brown for WVU so far in this era until our guy Blaine Stewart got to campus, baby, and until he took Cole Taylor and led the team in receptions, tied with the lead in touchdown receptions, and led the team in receiving yards. Hey, is that Anthony Becht walking through the door here for the Mountaineers all of a sudden? Blaine Stewart, position coach of the year, and I can't believe I went 4th, and I still got him, baby. Yeah.
I like
Hey,
it.
you want to think something funny? I think back to a conversation I had with Garrett. I want to say it was probably in March, and I was in Morgantown, and he and I were talking, and he's like, "Jed, wait till you see Cole Taylor." And they hadn't really even been to pads yet, right? I mean, he'd just been repping things out and throwing with them, and he's like, "Just wait till you see this dude. The range on him, the target radius on him, the skill set, the hands. I mean, he was just frothing at the mouth already." For the opportunity to throw to Cole Taylor. Now we saw that unfold the way it did, and it's exciting to think, because we talked about that these guys have an entire off season together to continue to build towards something special, because they already have a rapport.
Can't wait. It's great to see the tight end back as a central performer in the West Virginia Mountaineers offense, without a doubt. Before we get to our final category and wrap this thing up, a final thank you to our new friends of the program at Johnson Equipment. Make sure you're visiting their new location right outside of Weston on Route 33. Okay, gentlemen, final one here as we wrap up this WVU season review. Favorite uniform. And I don't mean in general. I want a specific game from this season, favorite uniform combination. I'll go first on this one again here. This year for me, it was going blue, blue, gold against Cincinnati in the Don Nehlen game. The look that Don Nehlen ushered in, right? I saw this really cool video. There's this guy, like Helmet History is his name on TikTok. And he does like three. Jed, I'll have to send it to you because you'll love it. It's totally like nerded out up your alley. But this guy does like 3-4 minute videos on college football programs and their helmet history from their earliest days to currently. And he just did one this week on WVU. And he talked about how we never had in our entire program history just a basic blue helmet with a W on it until Don Nehlen got to Morgantown in 1980. He said, why are we wearing white helmets? Why are we wearing this different color gold helmet? Our colors are gold and blue. Why not have that be our helmet? The way that all worked out to wear that combination, his combination with Don Nehlen being honored against Cincinnati, the school that gave him his first job, the school that he coached his first WVU game against. To me, my favorite uniform combination this year was blue, blue, gold against Cincinnati. My favorite uniform combination in general is when we go blue, blue, blue. I just love it. But I will say, don't come at me here, all right? I love the American flag decal helmets just stand alone. I want one. I would display it in my basement. But that's not the same as our traditional blue look to me that has the gold dub V on the helmet. So as much as I love those American flag state outline decals, which I do, I like them more in a vacuum than I do as part of the whole uniform, if that makes sense.
I agree.
Red just doesn't vibe with our uniforms. It just doesn't. So
I've said that for years.
So blue is my favorite uniform combination traditionally. I just don't love it with the red in the helmet. I love that standalone, but not as part of the combination. I don't think people will attack me for this and say I hate America. I think they'll understand what I'm saying here. So my favorite uniform combination this year, in honor of our guy Don Nehlen, blue, gold against Cincinnati. Skylar, let's go to you on this one.
I got to get right there with you. It is by far the best look that they have to offer, and it's not even close. And I think with the current set too, it's like the perfect combination or perfect mix of blue and gold. I mean, the road uniforms, they just don't do it for me because there's no real gold on
Not
them
enough gold,
unless you're
yeah.
wearing the pants or the helmet. So, I mean, I think the all whites do look cool, but I'm right there with like they're not cool until they start winning some games with them. So I like the blue, gold the best. And in general, outside of this season, I would actually say gold helmet, blue jersey, blue pants.
Ooh.
I really like that Georgia Southern game look.
Gold, blue, Skylar likes.
Gold, blue.
Gold, blue.
Sorry, gold, blue. Yeah,
blue.
sorry. Yeah.
Gold, blue. Okay, I got you. Okay.
Owen's answer, by the way, was the BYU game. The blue with the decal. That was Owen's answer.
See, I'm not a monochrome uniform guy. I like multiple colors when it comes to uniforms, but and you know, I'm not a huge fan of all the different uniform combinations. But I'm not averse to it. I'm not one of those get off my lawn guys because I know some of them. Trust me. I'm like, why do you care so much that you're trying to piss on somebody's parade about young recruits liking uniforms just because you don't? Who cares, right? But I will say this: I'm not a fan of the gray, but I always make one caveat. I do wish if you want to use gray uniforms,
I know where you're going with this.
Take the game closest to September 11th every year and make it the Chris Gray house.
Chris Gray game. Yeah.
I would be all about every part of that. And you know, Wes, if you want to incorporate the flag logo in that, I'm fine with that too.
Do it for that game.
You know?
Yep.
But I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to leave you guys with a question because I'm going to force you to think on your feet here for a second. I'm going to agree. I do think the traditional look we wore against Cincinnati for Coach Nehlen is the way to go. I mean, that's the standard bearer to me. And funny little aside story about that. Yes, we started wearing those uniforms and that logo against Cincinnati in the 1980 season opener. Okay. Now, you probably know who was responsible for drafting that flying WV logo, John Martin. Okay. Yep. Now, my interesting story is this. We've been to John Martin's studio in his house in an unremarkable neighborhood in Kansas. Okay. Back when the old MSN crew, me, Tony, Hoppy Kercheval, Dale Miller, all of us went over and visited John's studio. Now, I can tell you specifically when we were there, and there's a reason I can tell you when we were there. West Virginia wore the Flying WV logo on its helmet from the opener in 1980, every single game without fail, all the way up through 2013. When we came out, even in pregame, we came out with the normal Flying WV helmet logo. We went back in, switched helmets. I'll never forget. We were standing in the tunnel with Texas. We were standing in the tunnel November 9th, 2013. Dana looked at me and said, "What do you think of the lids?" And that's when we had the different logo other than the WV. We had the old school West Virginia logo on the helmet.
Remember that?
So that was November 9th, 2013. The first time since 1980
years.
we wore. Now there's a reason I'm giving you these dates. That's the first time since 1980 that we wore something other than the Flying WV logo created by one John Martin. 6 days later, we're in John Martin's studio. So we broke the streak after 33 years and wore something other than the logo he designed. And 6 days later, we walk into his studio in his house. Hilarious. The very first question out of his mouth, "What the hell's with that new logo?"
What the hell?
The very first question out of his mouth. But I'm telling you what, we could tell stories about that studio. It was unbelievable.
Jed, we might have to do that. We'll have to do that for an off-season episode.
That's going to be an off-season episode. It was an incredible place. But yeah, that's what I think of when I think of the Flying WV.
That's good.
The uniforms that we went to in 1980 when Coach Nealon was hired. But so that's my favorite.
Put us on the spot here as we wrap this up.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Those that you can come up with, and maybe it's too difficult to come up with. There's always one that I fall back to. There's a lot of combinations that we have not used out of these multiple combinations that are possible with the helmet color, the jersey color, and the pants color. I have a favorite that we have not used yet, and I'll tell you what it is. Now, you guys might or might not be able to come up with one that we haven't used, but I would like to see us blue pants on the road, blue pants, white jersey, gold helmet. We haven't done it. And that's one of the possible combos. There's a lot of possible combos we haven't used yet, but that's one that I think looks pretty appealing. In other words, I've seen the mock-ups of these things. When I glance through all the mock-ups, that's one that jumps out to me. But are there any that you guys can even think of out of all the possibilities that we might not have worn?
Yeah.
What's that?
I said all black, but just kidding.
The first thing that came to my mind, and I think we've worn this once or twice, but not often, is blue, white.
Yeah, we've worn that. We have.
I know we have. I don't think we do it very, or even white, blue, white.
Well, I tell you what, Wes. You know what I first think of when you say that? We wore it with those hideous white Flying WVs when Will broke his finger against Texas in Morgantown. That's what we had on.
But then we have those. It was the different. Yeah, it was like the white. It was the different decal, WV. Right? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. There's a handful of times we've definitely worn blue, white. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I know one.
Think of any?
Two uniforms. I'll just say that I absolutely hate are the banana suits, and I for the most part hate the grays. Except for, I'll admit, the Baylor game, they look pretty sharp under the lights
with the blue and the blue.
The blue is what made it pop. But I don't know if I can think of any off the top of my head.
The only time I've seen gray used in conjunction with something that I thought was mildly appealing, the outcome of the game was wretched. It was the Jalen Hurts game at Oklahoma in 19. We had gray pants, white jerseys, white helmets. That looked kind of slick, a little, kind of regal almost. But
yeah.
But like I said, I'm not a big gray fan unless you do the Chris Gray thing. I don't think it's a good look.
I like that. Skyler, no black jerseys. All right. We brought that thing back against Pitt and Hoops last week. Didn't go well. Retire it. Ren Baker, bury those things. Not 6 feet under. 60 feet under. Bury those, never to be spoken of again. Gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun.
Like it, I like it.
That's true.
If it
that's a good point.
One recruit.
If the recruits like it, I like it. That's a very good point. I'm with you on that because that's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Like I've seen some people raise Cain that we got traditional colors. We should
hold on.
Look,
I don't know about green and purple. I might draw it out there. All right, but I get what you're saying.
You realize our school colors used to be black and red.
Correct.
in the early days when we were the snakes, they were black and red before
Correct.
they were blue and gold.
Maybe,
So
Yep.
maybe no black uniforms, but I do have to make this one statement. Can we
Okay.
please go back to the glossy helmets?
Yes.
I think the matte look was cool at first.
I don't think Jed's
everybody
vibing
else
with
went
us on
to it.
this. Jed likes
I'm
the
good
matte
with it.
look. Okay.
I'm good
But
with it.
I like the glossy look.
Like I said,
Look at
not many
us.
of these things am I married to one way or the other.
No crime. No crime.
You can find the In the Gun trio here at Milan Fashion Week in Italy next month, where we'll be breaking down everything on the runway. Hey, everybody, do your best, Tommy. Do your best, Tommy
Tommy
DeVito.
cutlets.
Your paisan hands, your Mama Luke.
That was the
All right,
time on
gentlemen.
Sprockets when we dance.
Now, this is the time on ITG where we wrap up the episode. Final, just if anything else that you wanted to mention, that you wanted to shout out, that you wanted to say, speak now or hold your peace until next season. I've got a quick final word, but I'll let you guys go first. And not that you have to, but just floor's yours. If there's anything else you want to add, speak now or don't.
I mean, I think it was a lot of fun. Getting back to more competitive football. Again, no coaching search. You got something to build off of. A lot of cool moments. And it felt like I said earlier, even every win just felt like there was something memorable from it. Even some of the losses, there was like some play or some moment that stuck out. But a lot of fun being on here for the first time. So
yeah, welcome to the party, pal.
Glad you guys brought me on. A lot of fun.
Yeah, this season felt it has the vibe, and maybe you guys know what I mean. We'll find out moving forward. But so far at 8-4, going into a nice bowl matchup, this season has the vibe of a prelude to something.
Yep.
It has that vibe. Now we won't know that until next year, but it has that vibe.
I like that. And that's kind of where I'll go with my final word here. Guys, I enjoyed, Skylar, you just kind of touched on this. I enjoyed watching this team. Every week felt like an adventure for a different reason.
You look forward to it.
I looked forward to watching this team. Yes. And you looked forward to it. And honestly, guys, like, I'm going to be honest. I'll be vulnerable here for a second with you. It's the first time I felt this way since 2018. Like truly, I can be honest in saying that. You guys know, we all do. We work in football, right? All in different capacities, the three of us. But football is my living. Football is my livelihood. Football is something that I love, but also something that pays the bills. And you can get caught up in that, right? Like, you can get jaded by that in the week to week, and okay, this is work, and okay, this, and I'm watching this and that, and so much football, and I'm trying to get this thing done. But again, for the first time since 2018, I found myself truly enjoying, looking forward to watching this team, looking forward to games. Honestly, I don't want to say dreading them, but looking at them as just kind of another item on a checklist. For the first time, I felt invigorated. I felt that enthusiasm. I really looked forward to and enjoyed watching this team. And I'm completely with Jed. Really how we view this season in hindsight, right? 5 years, even this time next year, but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. How we view 2023 will depend a lot on how 2024 goes. Like the Sugar Bowl season that we talk about with Big O was romantic for all the right reasons, but most importantly because it launched an era of great football, right? And we all hope, we're all optimistic that that's going to be the case for 2023. But you know what? Even if it does, like, let's say 2024 is a good season, but not a great season. Maybe they do something. Maybe they go 9-3 next year, something like that, right? In a similar type year. I will always remember how much fun I had this year. I'll remember that of it being the first year of the Neil Brown era that really felt like fun, getting that juice and that pop back on offense, looking forward to games, having that rivalry win over Pitt for the first time in a decade. No matter how we view 2023 in hindsight, I'll remember that I had a lot of fun watching this team this year. And really, honestly, it might sound lame as hell, but that's all I ask for. I just want to look forward to watching this team play. I just want to have fun watching this team. And for the first time in a few years, I did this year. And for that, I am grateful.
And I'll add too, real quick, this is going to be the first time in a long time that it's going to be a fun off season. that we're not dreading
No doubt.
7 or
No
8 months
doubt.
of,
doubt.
what's going to happen with the team and what's this thing going to look like next year?
Who's hitting the
no
portal?
excitement. There's no hope. Where this offseason, there's that feeling of this team could do something special.
No doubt. No doubt.
You know, for all the things that make this the greatest game in the world, there is one thing that tends to skew it potentially more than any other game. What was the old saying that Don Shula had? A lot comes down to football, or a lot of football comes down to luck, and having a good quarterback's good luck, right? So if you have a quarterback, things are skewed so heavily in your favor in this game. And if you don't, you really you can win, but you really have to take the long way around. And for the first time in a while, it's you get the sense, again, far from a finished product, and that's the beauty of it. You get the sense that what we've seen out of that room, starting with Garrett and the potential that Nico brings, guys, I think we got quarterbacks we can win with, not despite of. And that makes everything different. I'm terribly excited to see what another offseason can do now with an understanding and appreciation of that. And instead of question marks, like those voids have been filled by question marks in the past couple years. Well, now it's bordering on an exclamation point because we've seen such promising things with the chips down, with the game on the line, delivering in such crucial. It's one thing to pile up numbers, okay, but it's another thing to make such critical plays in such critical moments, and your team knows that they can lean on you in those critical moments to win games. We've seen that out of this room. That excites me. Anytime you have that going into an off season, it's going to be an off season that you have a whole lot to look forward to.
Hell yeah, brothers. And you know what? Let's go put an exclamation point on that. And let's go beat the crap out of the Tar Heels in their backyard, December 27th down there in Charlotte. Yeah, sorry. I hope Mrs. Callie wasn't listening to me there. Okay.
Don't worry. She'll be getting it for the next 3 weeks.
A big thanks to all of our sponsors, all of our friends of the show here for making this possible. Big shout out to Big O as he's being Santa's helper and getting things done for UPS. This was a lot of fun. Let us know. You know where to get at us on Twitter. You know where to get involved in the YouTube comments. You want to chime in on some of these different things that we discussed today, good, bad, ugly, moments, individual awards. You know where to get your comments in as well. The one thing we ask of you before we get out of here.
Wes, it's been 2 weeks now, so we probably should mention we did our competition for championship weekend.
Ooh, yes.
We all made our picks.
Give him credit while he's not here so we don't have to listen to him brag.
Give him credit while he's not here. I love that idea. 0-1 championship weekend. He got 7 of the 11 picks correct. So he won that round of our tournament of champions. So we went with all the picks against the spread. And then the 11th pick was the over-under on the Iowa game with Michigan.
That's right.
In the Big Ten championship. So Owen did win that. So far we have you as the regular season champ in terms of picking the defense of the week. And then we have Owen as the conference championship weekend champ. And we're, of course, going to get our picks in for the postseason and have some fun with that as well as these bowls unfold throughout the course of December. We're not going to have a bowl episode, though Skylar and I will have Phil Steele on to discuss the Mountaineer Bowl and a couple others, but we're not going to have bowl episode per se, but we will be discussing bowls, and we're going to be making our picks, so they'll be available for consumption, and we'll see how that goes too.
You know where to get involved. You know where to consume us. YouTube, Twitter, all your different outlets, wherever you get your podcasts. It might be getting close to off-season time here, but we will roll through bowl season, and we'll keep this thing going into the new year. Thanks, everybody, for rocking and rolling with us throughout this season. Hopefully you enjoyed the season review. Hopefully it was fun to have some look back on some moments that really stood out here over the last 3 or 4 months or so as the Mountaineers got back in the fun side of things, got back in the winning more often than losing column. And that's what this is always, that's what this is really about, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're hoping for. And like I said, let's go put an exclamation point on it, get that 9th win down there against an ACC opponent in Charlotte. For the Runaway Beer Truck and Santa's favorite helper, Owen Schmidt. For Skylar Callahan, producer and host extraordinaire. And for the signal caller, Jed Drenning, I am Wesley Euler. Take care, everybody. We'll be back soon with our bowl previews, all of those good things. Be an ear, tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. You've been In the Gun.